Welcome to Building Profitable Relationships, the podcast where we talk with successful entrepreneurs and business owners who have built strong and profitable relationships with their customers, partners, and peers. In our conversations, we explore the heart and science of relationship building in the world of business. Welcome everyone to another episode of Building Profitable Relationships, where in this podcast we bring you inspiring stories, tips, and strategies for building strong relationships in your business. I am Yvonne A Jones, your host and founder of the Building Profitable Relationships podcast. My guest today, I am so delighted to introduce you to Harry Spaight. Harry is located in Central Florida. Welcome, Harry.
Hey, Yvonne, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. And Harry is a seasoned sales professional who has worked with teams and executives to elevate their craft to sell with dignity. And that actually is the title of Harry's book, Selling with Dignity. He's the founder of his business, yes, and he's also the founder of another podcast. And what's the name of your podcast?
The podcast is called Sales Made Easy.
Sales Made Easy. Excellent. Yes. So thank you for being here, Harry. Now we're going to go ahead and get right started immediately.
Okay.
Now, tell us a little bit about yourself, please, and then tell us a little bit about your business.
Okay, great. So I like to have a little fun in life, have a sense of humor. I've been married for over 30 years, got 3 children. Those are the things that really matter. But in my life, I have done a whole bunch of different things. For about 10 years, my wife and I served as missionaries, and we spent a couple of years in the Dominican Republic. And from there, I left that work and got into corporate sales, which was a long journey to get there. It seemed long at the time. But then I built a nice business where I felt like I could be the anti-salesperson, the person who was not the pushy closer, just the regular nice person that wanted to make a living and serve other people, because that's what I thought sales was all about, and made a nice living. And I felt like after a couple of decades of doing that, it'd be good to share what I've learned with other people so that they could do similar things without feeling gross and slimy with ways some sales is out there today.
Thank you. And that's exactly what I started saying. You built a nice business, and you did. And you have now set the tone for many persons who are in sales, but I'm not going to reveal all of that yet. I'm going to allow you to share that. So let's go back to when you moved from your missionary service in the Dominican Republic to moving back to the United States and in sales. Now, at any point, you can share with us, how is it that you got started with focusing on those relationships and building communities around those relationships?
Yeah, I'd like to take all the credit that I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't. The honest answer is I just applied the principles that we're all familiar with. Anyone who's gone to church has heard things about how to treat others like yourself, do good to others, love your neighbor. All those things I just started putting into practice in business. Mm-hmm. That was my business acumen. I really didn't have any. I had a janitorial business. So if you can imagine, I did the mission work in the day, and in the evenings and at nights, I was cleaning floors and office buildings and, all the stuff that people don't imagine themselves doing. I was the janitor, right? It was my own business and all. But the important thing is that I learned what it was to work, so that I had the mission thing going on, but I had to earn a living, and I had to do grunge work that no one else wanted to do, sometimes in the middle of the night, and my work ethic was pretty solid. So when I got into sales, I took that same work ethic of I was going to work, I was going to complete the job. And I had my personality, which, is all about serving others. And so I wasn't this egotistical, I'm number one, I'm going to be the best, I am the best. I didn't talk like that at all. I just like, when I heard people talk like that, I'm like, well, who are you? And so I just came into sales, which is like the exact opposite of what you see in a lot of movies. And that's why I say the anti-salesperson, because I was completely against what others were doing in a lot of ways, but I took the good from what they were doing too. And then over time, when you're applying those principles, loving your neighbors, serving others, then you're building great relationships. And, I would tell the truth. If someone wasn't a good candidate for what I was selling, I'd say, it's probably not for you. I didn't realize I was laying this foundation of building trust. But, people would call back and say, I like what you said, 6 months ago, I think we're ready now. And, that's really how I grew my business.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Harry. And, one of the things that I really appreciate and love about everything in your book, wherever you have an opportunity to speak, you are proud to share that your success was based on principles found in the Bible.
Yeah.
Because one of the ones that you talk about is what is commonly called the golden rule. Treat others the way we want to be treated. And you allow people to trust you. And that's a very important element in business, because if people don't trust you, then you're not going to have customers and you're not going to be able to maintain the relationships that you're trying to establish.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not after the one and done sale, right? Where you're going to, just manipulate people, get the sale and move on, like the bull in the china shop, an analogy, where sales it's where you look up sales these days on YouTube or something. It's all about closing business. It has very little to do with what the prospect or client is saying. It has everything to do with what the seller is saying. And I don't have any of those magical closing lines. I don't believe in that. It's just like you can do very well in sales and grow your business just by treating people the right way. Right. And then you have to ask for the business, granted. But if you ask for the business after you've treated them well, and just ask, well, a good next step would be this. What do you think about that? And that comes from the book, The Perfect Close. But prior to that, it was like, what do you think about doing this? What do you think about this? And just let the person tell you, and they would give you the answer. It wasn't anything magical in my book, right?
Right. But to them it was, because essentially most people are only concerned about what they're going to be getting out of it. And it's a transaction rather than a relationship. So exactly, you were able to stand out that way.
Yeah. So, which is, I mean, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead,
okay.
Harry.
So this idea where people say, I don't have enough experience and, I'm not good enough. People have been doing this longer, whatever. And they've got the big signs. They've got all of this and that. You can clearly separate yourself by doing what you just said, right? By treating others well, you will be the one that stands out. It's not about how big your business is. It's about how people feel when you speak with them. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yes, I love that. It's the experience that we give them. And what I think we fail to remember is that the customer experience is based on exactly what you just said. It's how the customer feels at the end of the interaction, not how we feel or how we felt we did, how well we did, in our opinion. It's how the customer feels. And you spoke to that earlier, when you allow people to gracefully say no, when you say it may not be for you now, but they remember that you respected them, you showed them respect. And so when they were ready, they came back to you because you also built a level of trust. And I'm hoping that anyone who really wants to grow their business, we all want to grow a business and we have to sell something. Doesn't matter if we don't like sales, but sometimes sales gets a bad name. And it doesn't have to when we do it with dignity, as you have just highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. Very true.
Thank you. So then piggybacking on that, Harry, What do you believe are some of the key elements of building strong relationships with customers, joint venture partners, your peers? What are just some key elements in addition to what you have shared before?
Well, I look at it, Yvonne, as when people think of sales, they think of speaking and all the things you're supposed to say in sales. I've got to say this if they say that. And when they do this, I've got to say that. And I think that, from what I've learned over the years, it really comes down to listening. It's not the magic in what we say. It really shows personal interest when we actually are making eye contact, not staring someone down, but looking in their direction. When their eyes move away, you move your eyes away. You don't make them feel uncomfortable, but that eye contact and showing that you really care and that you're listening and that maybe you're just nodding a little bit, that you understand. This goes a long way where there's a connection versus, you talk and so I can talk, right? So that it's your turn, now it's my turn. And this is where sales is kind of weird, where it's not like you have to have an answer for everything. You can enjoy the silence in the conversation. And I love the fact that there's a book by Anthony Iannarino, and he talks about the value of silence. And he says, after someone finishes speaking, he says, try to count to 4 before you open your mouth. That's pretty hard to do. But when you get comfortable with it and you kind of play the game and you just say, I'm going to be so relaxed, I'm not even going to rush. Now, it doesn't work on podcasts real well because we'd be editing the silence. But in a conversation with a prospect or a client or a joint venture partner, you ask someone what they really want to get out of this, and then they tell you, and instead of jumping right in as soon as they hit the last period of the last sentence, you say, well, we've got that. Or that's exactly what we do. And you sound so salesy and cheesy. And instead, just chill and relax and let it sink in and let the other person see that you're letting that sink in. And then you kind of let nature, right, the natural conversational flow to take over. And that's where the magic happens, in my opinion. So listening, right, intentionally is the key thing to building that relationship. And then, a simple thing is follow up with doing what you said you were going to do. Mm-hmm. Such a simple thing that's so rarely done these days.
Yeah.
Right. We all have the excuses. Well, I got busy, traffic, I forgot, my dog ate my homework. And, the simple thing is, like, if we said we're going to get back to you the following day, get back the following day. If it's, whatever that little promise is, those little tiny promises mean something, which is our reputation. And, you can make all the excuses in the world, right? Where people say, well, I'm going to do this, I'll meet you there. Oh, I'm sorry, something came up. And then you forgive the first time. And the second time they say, well, something came up again, I really apologize. It's like, okay, well, that's twice. So now I'm going to start questioning, do they really want to meet with me? And so this human nature, right? I mean, I start to have doubts because the way I am, I think others do the same. What's your thought?
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. There's a saying, I can't remember it now, but it says the first time is on me, but the next time,
Yeah.
I'll be foolish. Or the first time is on you, but the next time is on me because I'll be foolish to allow you to trick me a third time.
Right.
But regardless of what that is, you said a few things, and one of them is that I really appreciate. One of them is that we have to learn to embrace the silence. And it's not just sales, it's just any area, because even as a coach, people have to think. So sometimes you may ask a question and you feel as the coach, you tend there's silence while the person needs time to think, but you think that, oh, I have to cover the silence. And so you jump in and say something when the person, so the same thing with sales. We have to allow people have to think about something. So we have to learn, and it's a learned skill. It's not very easy because we tend to want to just have a back and forth as you and I are having right now, and feel that if there's a long silence, something is wrong.
Yeah, totally agree. And in fact, there's a line that I used years ago. Someone said, like, if you ask for the business, do not ask another question,
Mhm.
right? In that moment, because it's got to register. Now, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, but when you're asking for the business, it has to register. And you have to let them figure out how they're going to respond, and kind of let the moment work itself out for them. Now, they may say, well, I really want to do this, but I'm not really 100% sure, and I don't know what to say. And they're going through all this in their mind. And then we say something along the lines like completely unrelated. And we'll say something like, well, is the price too high? It's like they weren't even thinking of that.
Mhm.
But now you just raised a concern that they can easily say, well, yeah, I guess it is kind of high. And then you start justifying price, and it may not have been the path at all that was going through their mind, and wasn't even a concern until we raised that concern.
Yes.
And you notice I don't use the word objection, because objections raise this thinking of, you say something, I'm supposed to overcome it.
Mhm.
And so that's why I like to use the word concern, is that you help people with their concerns, you don't overcome their concerns.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother point, but you get the idea, right? We just
Oh,
have
yeah.
to let the silence do its work, which it does in conversations.
Absolutely. Wow. So, Harry, I happen to know, because we're connected on LinkedIn, I know you're pretty active on LinkedIn. So is there any other social media platform, or even your activities on LinkedIn? How do you leverage social media and any other digital channels to engage and connect with your audience and essentially build those long-term relationships?
Yeah, I mean, so you want to take the conversations offline when you can. We get very comfortable behind the comfortability of being behind the monitor. But having a conversation, I've built some great relationships. I mean, look at us, right? We went beyond just having comments on social media. We now have a relationship, right? We're now
Mhm.
friends. And this is what you need to do, right? If you want to build up the trust, would I have any issue recommending Yvonne A Jones? Absolutely not, right? Because I've seen how she works. I see how she treats people. I'm hoping the same is true with me, but this is what you want out of social media, is to take those online relationships, which can be fairly shallow. They can be all right, but generally, until you have that one-to-one conversation where you're in someone's virtual room, so to speak, out on the patio, if you will, or in my office, those conversations mean something more, and that's where you build up the relationship. So on LinkedIn, it took me a while to figure that out. I mean, for years I felt like, oh no, this is uncomfortable. Eventually you start doing what's uncomfortable and becomes pretty comfortable, and then you start asking to meet people. And the world, I believe, Yvonne, the world is filled with a lot of great people. And we don't know about it because we get stuck, looking at the wrong things, and we don't realize how awesome so many people are. I mean, the amount of conversations they have compared to the amount of people I leave the conversation and say, that person's a clown or anything like that. And that never happens. They're all really great people. It's like, man, this LinkedIn has got a ton of great people on it. And I've started to do similar on Instagram and now Twitter. So a lot of good people in this world.
Yeah, and it takes time, but it's time worth spent, because we take time to not have sales conversations, but just get to know you conversations. And
Right.
unfortunately, many people find that very challenging because you set an appointment with them and you say, we're not going to talk about business. We can talk about business. I just want to get to know who you are.
Yeah.
But they're so used to talking about business, they keep veering off to the business
Right.
side. That you have to kind of bring them back. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
are almost running out of time, but I want to ask you this, Harry. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in their business about building those strong relationships, whether with their customers or clients or their communities? What advice would you give them?
Well, I'd say the first thing is figure out who you want to be selling to, right? It's commonly referred to as your ideal client, your avatar. Who are those people and where are they? Right. So the key thing is that if you're going to start new relationships, you might as well start the relationships with people that can either buy from you or can refer business or refer people to you. And that will help you to prevent a lot of, I'm not saying any relationship is a bad relationship, but if you're selling a high ticket item or you're selling to technology, for instance, to people who don't like technology, that's probably not the good use of your time. You want to go where the people who can buy are from you, whether that be executive levels on LinkedIn or people that can recommend you, or your local network, your chamber of commerce, your local Kiwanis or Rotary Club, but you want to go where the buyers are primarily and not sell to them. Right? That's the key, is how do you serve those people and help them reach their goals? And then they in turn will ask you and say, so Yvonne, what is it you do again? And that's when they're now ready to help you. But if we lead with ourselves, it's going to be, oh, here we go. Here's Harry, the sales guy, always talking about what he does, wants to cut to the chase, close me on something. That's the stuff that's off-putting. So look for where your people are and try to serve them. And I'm not saying this is going to extend the sales cycle. It's going to give you an opportunity to have a sales cycle with people that you actually care about, and they will care about you and will refer business to you. That's the key. Thoughts?
I totally agree with that, because what people want to get to know who you are first. We cannot expect that people are going to become our referral partners who haven't had a chance to get to know us. They only know us as somebody who's always pushing something. But you just said, which I totally agree with and would encourage anyone, go with an attitude of service. When you lead with an attitude of service, you endear other people to you, you draw people to yourself. And this way, you're now able to share with them. They will ask you, well, how can I help you?
Right.
Or what can I do for you? And they will do it with confidence, as we know each other and in our various areas, we would never hesitate to recommend someone. That's how we want to be, so that we can build that community around us and around our business.
Exactly. And, I think a lot of it is learning that in the beginning, where you think everybody would be interested in you, but they're not. I mean, the world is filled with nice people. It doesn't mean that they're interested in what you have to do. I mean, in the sense that if they're not interested, you don't need to tell them. Right? Because that's when we start looking like we're salesy and it's uncomfortable and we're awkward. Whenever it's awkward, that means you're probably talking to someone who's not really listening or is not interested. So it should be very natural, easy, if you will, to have conversations. And if it isn't, you got to look in the mirror and ask, why isn't this easy? And the person that you're talking to may be totally not interested. Maybe they don't have a need. Maybe they don't like you, which happens, right? We don't always connect with everybody, right? So there's a lot of things we got to look in the mirror and say, why am I not connecting with this person? And it's okay, because we got to find our community, our tribe, and not everyone is going to be a fit, and that's okay too.
That's so true. That is so true. And with those words, I am just going to thank you so much, Harry, because I think we've run out of time.
Okay,
as far
that's
as
great.
share, you have shared a lot of value. The servant's heart, basic principles that have stood the test of time, showing a respect for other people, doing what we want others to do to us, we do to them. Basic principles, lifetime principles, are what you share. Selling can be dignified, and it is a dignified profession. We just have to learn how to build those relationships so we attract the right people and we are attractive to the right people. Any last
Beautiful.
minute thing last minute comment you would give?
Well, I know you have a great community and you're serving them well, and we're of a similar mind. So Yvonne has this down. It's very servant minded, and this is why your people love you. So we need more of this in sales. More of what you do in sales is great.
Thank you so much for being my guest, Harry. And for our listeners, the book Selling with Dignity, Your Formula for Life-Changing Sales Results. I know Harry didn't ask me to promote this. I'm doing it because I have the book in my hand. I love this book, and I think this is a book that all of us, even if we don't feel like we're in sales, but once we're in business, it would be a good book to have on our shelves and on our desk to read even a chapter per day. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. And thank you once again, Harry. And for our listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us today. And I just want to remind you that when you focus on relationships, the money will follow.
Nice. Love it.